Good evening, students.
Good
Good
evening, ma'am.
evening. Good evening, ma'am.
Let us begin the class with a case study, the Linux system. We have to start with the scheduling. So in Linux system, scheduling algorithm which is followed by this Linux scheduler is this preemptive priority based scheduler. This these are the characteristics of this one. It is and this um, in 2.5 this one preemptive priority based scheduling algorithm. I hope you remember what is a preemptive scheduling and what is priority based scheduling. In 2.5 Linux version they had this one. In 2.6 completely fair scheduler was introduced. This was the scheduling algorithm in Linux 2.6. And what is this completely fair scheduler? Completely fair scheduler. It eliminates traditional common idea of time slice. Means earlier uh, schedulers they used to allot a time. Uh, so this one has eliminated time slice and instead all tasks allocated a portion of processor's time. And this completely fair scheduler calculates how long a process should run as a function of total number of tasks. As a total number of tasks, consider n to be the total number of tasks, and then 1 by n. So n runnable task means each gets 1 by n of processor time. Okay, equally time will be divided among all the running processes, and then weights each task with its nice value, and smaller nice value is greater than a higher weight, higher priority. So some kind of priority is associated, and then uh, based on that, and this 1 by n, um, share this one proportion of time, processor will get the process gets the processor time based on this. And here, okay, task weight is something which is given as the task weight is based on its priority and divided by total weight of all running processes, and that way uh, uh, time will be divided. Consider simple case of two runnable tasks with equal weight and the target latency of 10 millisecond each one. Then each one will run for 5 millisecond because they have got equal weight, means equal priority, and it is 1 by 10 which is equal to it is like 10 by 2, means each one will get equal, so 5. And if 10 there are 10 runnable tasks, then each one will get 1 millisecond. So that way this is known as completely fair scheduler that was introduced in Linux 2.6. And kernel synchronization, kernel mode execution occur in two ways. A running program may request for operating system service through system call, and a device driver may deliver a hardware interrupt. So these are the two ways in which uh, there would be a change in the mode from user mode to kernel mode, and that request goes from user mode to the kernel mode. And then this kernel synchronization, Linux uses two techniques to protect the critical section. We studied about synchronization and critical section. Linux uses two techniques. The first one is when normal kernel code is non-preemptible. Whenever operating system is executing, other processes cannot preempt it. If you remember, preemption is taking back the resource. Uh, and then the system cannot take back the resources from operating system. And the second technique applies to critical section that occur in interrupted service routines. So interrupted service routines, whenever interrupt service routine is executing, at that time also this okay, interrupts are disabled during critical section. Whenever a process is running in critical section, interrupts are disabled. No other process can issue an interrupt. And then it provides spin locks, semaphores, reader writers version of both. This kernel synchronization has this techniques in order to um, prevent the conflict occurring and protect the critical section. So you can see here disable kernel preemption and enable kernel preemption. Uh, kernel whenever there is a single process, kernel preemption is disabled. Means resources we cannot be taken back by the, and if there are multiple processes, then acquire spin lock, release spin lock. Acquire spin lock is like a lock. If you apply the lock on that, then other processes cannot use it. And then this kernel, Linux kernel uses synchronization architecture that allows long critical sections to run without having interrupts disabled. Actually, interrupts are disabled during critical section execution. However, to avoid performance penalties, critical long, whenever there are long critical sections, then interrupts are enabled. And interrupt service routines are separated into top half and bottom half. Top half is for a normal interrupt service routine, and bottom half is run with all interrupts enabled. Uh, if you know, in two section, in two parts. If it is running in this, interrupts are disabled. If it is running in this, interrupts are enabled. That way. And interrupt protection levels in kernel has that increasing priority. When the priority increases, interrupts are stopped. When there are user mode program, they are preemptable. Preemptable means, you know, you can revoke the resources, take back the resources whatever you have allotted. And kernel system service routines, uh, some of the kernel routines are also preemptable. And bottom half interrupt handlers, you if you observe here, what is happening is priority is increasing this way. This is less priority, this is highest priority, this is least priority. And then symmetric multiprocessing in Linux 2.0. Symmetric multiprocessing means you have multiple processors executing, and symmetric means they are similar. And then what can happen is, when one processor is executing in a critical section, other processes also should not be allowed to enter in the critical section. So here fine grained locking, processor affinity, and load balancing, these were added in version 3.0. In memory management, so here Linux system has pages. Pages are allocated and pages are released, and groups of pages can be allocated, and small blocks of memory can be allocated. So physical memory deals with, Linux physical memory deals with all this allocation and freeing of pages, groups of pages, blocks of memory. And additionally, it has a mechanism for handling virtual memory, memory mapped IO, and then split memory into 4 different zones due to hardware characteristics. Here there is a zone DMA, direct memory access, normal zone, and high memory zone. Based on the functionality, zone will be chosen, and allocation will be performed based on those zones. So essentially, this physical memory is managed by Linux by page allocator, which allocates and frees all physical pages, and it can allocate ranges of physically contiguous pages on request. And it uses, here you have to remember this, it uses a buddy heap algorithm to keep track of the available physical pages. And here apparently memory regions allocate memory regions paired with adjacent partners. So here this for this is the adjacent partner, and whenever two allocated partner regions are both freed up, they are combined to form a larger region. If these two are adjacent and these two were allocated, and when they get freed, when they are released, they are combined to form a large region. And when small requests cannot be satisfied by allocating an existing small free zone, then a larger free region will be subdivided into two partitions to satisfy the request. If a request arrives for this 2 MB, and there is no 2 MB space available, consider that this is 1.5 and here it is 5, then this larger portion is subdivided into two partners. Okay, these are known as partners because they are adjacent. And then these two partners are split up to allocate the memory to this requesting process. Memory will be allocated later. This might be allocated to some other process. When they both get freed up, they are combined. This is buddy heap means these two are buddies, that way. Okay, managing physical memory. So it is a Linux kernel can perform allocations of memory statically or dynamically. Statically means what happens? Memory will be reserved. Dynamically means via page allocator, which allocates at the time of execution. Okay, and this slab allocator for kernel memory. It uses slab allocator for kernel memory, and page cache and virtual memory system also manage physical memory. No, page cache and virtual memory. Page can be cached. Cached means having a copy, and virtual memory means that on the disk you have a separate space, which is known as virtual memory. these are also managed by this physical memory module. And page cache is kernel's main cache for files and main mechanism for IO to block devices. Page which are frequently accessed, they can be cached. Hmm, a copy will be kept, and then sometimes page cache stores entire pages uh, of file contents for local and network file IO. Okay, entire pages can also be cached. Look at here, this is buddy heap algorithm. Uh, Initially, it was 16 KB, one large region of memory. Based on the request, it is split up into 8K and 8K, and further this 8K is split up into 4K and 4K. Later, this can be again merged. And this one slab allocator in Linux. Look at here, these are cache, these are slabs. This is physically contiguous pages memory. These are kernel objects. So what is happening is these kernel objects are cached, and the means in main memory, which are known as slab. Virtual memory in Linux system. Uh, this virtual memory manager, like we have page allocator for physical memory management, there is a virtual memory manager that maintains two separate views of a process address space, a logical view and a physical view. A logical view is concerned with how a user sees the process and program, and physical view is the allocation of memory in the form of pages on hardware. Okay, so a logical view describing instructions concerning the layout of the address space. So if this is your process, this is user 1, this is user 2. User 1 has, consider that 1 2 3 4 5 pages. User 2 has 1 2 3 4 pages. User 1 will view that this page number is 4, whereas in physical memory this page 4 may be somewhere here at location 150 or 200. So this is physical view, and these are logical views. This user 1 has a view of its process, user 2 has view of the process concerned to that particular user. And this virtual memory characterized by backing store. Backing store is the area where pages are stored when they are not in use, and this backing store describes from where pages for a region come, and regions are usually backed by a file or by nothing. That is known as demand zero memory. When you have a backing store, this is backing store. Sometimes pages are allocated on this backing store. Sometimes these regions are not backed by any memory. Then it is known as demand zero memory. And then the kernel creates a new virtual address space. Whenever a process runs a new program with exec system call, and upon creation of a new process by fork system call, what happens is a new virtual address space is created. Whenever a new program is executing, process is given a new virtual address space. Okay, one address space is given for a process, and then program loading routine means uh, this area is reserved for a program that is executing. It is allocated by the virtual memory manager, and then this program loading routines means these are the functions that will uh, bring and store the program in this area. Okay, and then a new process is created by fork system call, and what kernel does is it copies the parent process virtual memory area descriptors, parent page tables are copied, and after the fork, parent and child share the same physical pages. What happens is whenever a fork system call is executed, this memory and this memory, uh, this is parents, this is child. Everything is copied into child, and child will have its own copies, and child will execute it in its own physical address. And it has got its own memory. Memory will be allocated. Swapping and paging. We know that in paging mechanism, uh, pages are um, saved into this backing store or virtual memory, which is known as page out, and pages can be brought in, which is known as page in. So in Linux, this virtual memory paging system reallocates pages of memory from physical memory out to the disk when the memory is needed for something else. Whenever memory is needed, when it gets full, so then some of the pages are paged out. It is known as swapped out into the backing store. And this VM paging system can be divided into two sections: page out policy and paging mechanism. Page out policy means this is an algorithm which decides which pages to write out to disk and when. Out of all the pages, uh, which one to swap out to backing store. And paging mechanism actually transfers the pages onto the swap space. And bitmap are used to track used blocks in swap space. In swap space, if suppose there are 100 locations, then there will be a bitmap like this. There will be a bitmap. If it is occupied, one, not occupied means zero. Consider, assume. So in this manner, it keep track of what are the regions that are occupied and what are the regions that are free. And it allocator uses next to fit algorithm to try to write contiguous runs. Next to fit algorithm is whichever in case if 2 MB has to be stored, and we have got 1.8. This is actually this, and there is a 3 point or 2.6. So out of this, the 1.8 cannot be chosen, and so you can choose this one. It's a bit larger, but this is the one which is the least after this 1.8. Therefore, this one has to be chosen. And kernel virtual memory, it Linux kernel virtual memory. Okay, it reserves a constant architecture dependent region of the virtual address space of every process for its own internal use. Every process has got its own virtual. This process has got this its own virtual memory. This process has got its own virtual memory. This process has got its own virtual memory. So this way, all the processes have got their own virtual memory. However, in every virtual memory operating this kernel reserves some space. so that it can write some details about it. So the kernel virtual memory area, this is, consider that this is kernel virtual memory area in each process that contains two regions: a static area that contains page table references, and another one is the remainder of the reserved section is not reserved for any specific purpose. Its page table entries can be modified to point to any other areas of memory. So first one is static area that contains page table references. Second one is reserved but not used for specific purpose. It can be used for any uh, task, such as pointing to other areas of memory. Executing and loading user programs. So Linux maintains a table of functions for loading programs, and it gives each function the opportunity to try loading the given file when an exec system call is made. Whenever an exec system call is made, then the Linux, what Linux does is, uh, it has to execute the program, and to execute the program, it has to be loaded in the memory. And the registration of multiple loader routines allow Linux to support both ELF and A.out binary format. These are the binary formats of the processes. Uh, and binary file pages are mapped into virtual memory. The process in binary format is mapped into, because virtual memory is allocated for every process, so those binary files are mapped into the virtual memory. Only when a program tries to access a given page will a page fault result in that page being loaded into physical memory. What happens is, whenever in Linux, whenever a program is loaded, some space is reserved. Now user try to execute that a particular page from this program, then that page is brought in, and further user try to execute some other uh, part of the program, then that is brought in. That way, uh, on demand basis, pages are loaded in the physical memory. And this ELF format, it is a binary format that consists of header and several page aligned section. There are so many other sections, and there is a header that contains information about the memory, the section, uh, then mapping of the section of the file map. This is mapped to this, means if this address is 2 and this 2 gets stored in location 150, there should be mapping. Otherwise, how will we know that where is it stored? Because every program has got its own logical address space. Okay. Next, memory layout for this one. This you see here, there is a forbidden region. This can be used only by the OS, not by user programs. And these are memory mapped regions. We learned that IO, during IO operations, some of the memory locations can be mapped onto the IO, such that when a processor will write on in the memory, which further gets propagated to the IO device. So this is memory map region. You have here program text, initialized text, uninitialized text, runtime data. This is all about one program, uh, which is under execution. And actually this is like process, a process. And then this process has got some memory mapped region as well, because if it performs IO operation, and then it has got a stack, in order to allow process to grow and shrink. Because in a stack, you can go on adding the elements, and you can remove the elements. Mainly for function calls, stack is used. So whenever you call a function 1, so function 1 is inserted into the stack. If suppose function 1 calls function 2, then function 2 is inserted in the stack. When function 2 calls function 3, it is also inserted in the stack. So this function 3 when it finishes execution, it is pop out. You know, push and pop operations you can perform. So you can pop it out. And then later F2 can also be removed from the stack. Likewise, F1 can also be. This way, stack is also necessary for a process. And kernel virtual memory, this is invisible to the user mode, user code, user. This is maintained by kernel. It stores several process related information. So this is the layout. And then static and dynamic linking. We know that whenever a program uh, invokes a library function, it has to be linked with the program. For instance, in C language, if you have math.h and if you use sqrt function, are you associating our program is suppose s square square root dot c is our program, and then we are using this library. If they both are combined at the compile time, it is known as statically linked um, linking to libraries. If this is done at runtime during execution, it is dynamic linking. And then this in Linux, uh, if those library functions that are embedded directly into the program uh, is statically linked to its libraries. And dynamic linking, when it actually dynamic linking is the efficient technique, and it has got uh, combining of this library function with our files at runtime. And Linux implements dynamic linking in user mode through special linker library, because dynamic linking is more efficient. Every dynamically linked program contains small statically linked function called when process starts. So here it maps the link library into memory. Link library determines the dynamic libraries required by process and names of variables and functions needed. And it maps libraries into middle of virtual memory and resolves references to symbols contained in the libraries. And shared libraries compiled to be position independent code, so that can be loaded anywhere. If in case sqrt.h is a library that is used by multiple user programs, then it can be loaded in position independent code at some place where multiple processes can refer to it. And the file system in Linux file system is a hierarchical directory tree, and it has got root on the top, and then it has got uh, directories, subdirectories, further subdirectories, and so on. And you see that virtual file system has been implemented in Linux. Virtual file system provides an abstraction so that the user can access any kind of file system, local or remote, in a similar manner. And this Linux virtual file system is designed around object-oriented principle, and it composed of 4 components. There is a inode object that represents an individual file. There is a file object that represents a file that has been opened. There is a super block object that contains information about the entire file system. There is a directory object that represents an individual directory entry. About a particular directory, there is a directory object. It maintains information about all this. And this file system um, has got these system calls. User can call open to open a file, read from a file, write to a file, mmap, memory mapped file. So these are the uh, system calls. And you know what happens in Unix, because it provides a layer of abstraction. In a similar manner, you can read the data from a file, from an output device, no sorry, input device, from a file, from an network, from other remote machine, in a similar manner. You need not have multiple complex instructions. And then Linux has a file system which is known as ext3 file system. This ext3 is a it is standard on disk file system for Linux, and it uses mechanism similar to that of BSD, fast file system, for locating data blocks. And it supersedes EXTFS, EXT2. Earlier versions of Linux had EXT2 and EXTFS, and EXT3 has superseded them and has you know has implemented more advanced features, and ext4 is under development. ext3 file system, the difference between ext2fs and ffs. What is ffs? This BSD fast file system, because it is based on that. Then what are the differences? In FFS, the disk is allocated to files in blocks of 8 KB, and the blocks being subdivided into fragments of 1 KB. Okay, what happens in memory? It is 8 KB, and 8 KB has further 1 KB. And to store small files or partially filled blocks at the end of the file. ext3 does not use fragments. Yes. This FFS uses fragments to store the smaller files. ext3 does not use fragments. And ext3 uses cluster allocation policies to place logically adjacent block of a file into physical adjacent blocks on disk. Okay, so that it can submit an IO request for several disk blocks as a single operation on a block group. So this way, what ext does is it can allocate cluster allocation policy to give logically adjacent blocks of a file. You know, a large file can be stored contiguously, means adjacent to each other, in the form of cluster allocation, which is also known as a block group. And it maintains a bitmap of free blocks. Whatever blocks are free in this memory, it what it does is it maintains a map. This is known as bitmap. So for every location, there is an entry. If it is 1, it is it might be free, or it is 0 means free. Whenever it gets allocated, it gets the other value. If it is 0, it gets 1. If it is 1, it gets 0. It depends on how it is implemented. And then ext2fs block allocation policies. You see here, even if large file requires the memory blocks like this. If you remember, we have studied about this linked allocation, like this node contains the address of the next node, which contains the address of the next node. This is allocating scattered free blocks by keeping a pointer to the next block, and this is allocating contiguous free blocks. Okay, these purples denote that blocks which are in use, and then this block selected by allocator, and this one is a bitmap search. It can perform a search through bitmap where which block is free and which block is occupied. And then this journaling is nothing but maintaining a log. You can also keep a diary or a journal in which you can write what you did on a particular day, and what you have to do, what you wanted to do, what you actually did, something like information uh, is journaled, means is written in the log file. Once the transaction is completed, it is committed and it is stored in the log file. Okay, and then whenever system crash occurs, then it refers to journal to get to know about what operations um, were in progress. Okay, and then this Linux PROC file system. This PROC file system does not store data, rather its contents are computed on demand according to user file IO requests. Whenever user requests for a data, it is computed from the file in which it is stored. Okay, PROC must implement a directory structure and the file contents within. What ext3 is concerned with storing the file on the disk, and it it keeps track of information about file system, about files, and so on. And this PROC file system, this one does not store like it is like a view in database. Whenever you create a view, data is not stored, rather it is computed on demand. So that one it does that. And input and output, Linux device oriented file system accesses disk storages through two cache. It has data is cached in the page cache, which is unified with the virtual memory system, and metadata is cached in the buffer cache. What happens is, if your data is 1 2 3, this is your data which is cached in page cache, and metadata will be like it is a number, means these are numbers and they are 3. So this is metadata, data about data. This is stored in buffer cache. So Linux splits all devices into 3 classes. Block devices, character devices, and network devices. Block devices allow random access. Character devices support reading and writing of character, individual byte of information. Network devices, this is related to reading and writing over the network. So these 3 are the classes of Linux, and Linux splits all devices into these 3 classes. Whatever, if there is a keyboard, if there is a mouse, if there is a memory card, this network card, this all what it does is it stores them in these classes. And then block devices, these block devices provide interface to all disk devices. Okay, and It maintains buffers. Disk on buffers can be maintained on RAM, memory, main memory, or on disk. And this buffer cache is used as a pool of buffer for active I/O and cache for completed I/O. And then the request manager manages the reading and writing of buffer content. This block devices has this a part which is a block buffer. Okay, this block buffer is used for keeping track of active I/O or completed I/O. And this request manager is used for reading or writing of buffer contents to and from a block device driver. And kernel 2.6 introduced completely fair queuing. This completely fair queuing is a algorithm in which it uses C-scan algorithm. C-scan algorithm, disk scheduling algorithm, we studied about the C-scan algorithm, and with round robin between all outstanding I/O from all processes. And then device driver block structure. This network socket, protocol driver, network device driver. This is with respect to the networking, means reading and writing data over the network to and from remote machine. And this user application, it can have a character device file, and this TTY driver line discipline. Through this data is passed over the network. And here we have file system, block device file, IO scheduler, different components. Character devices, it does not offer random access to fixed blocks. In kernel we have block, character, and network. So you see these character devices do not offer random access, and character device driver must register a set of functions which implement the driver's various file IO operations. The kernel performs almost no pre-processing of a file read or write request to a character device, but simply passes on the request to the device. Okay, and here kernel maintains a standard interface to access these terminal devices. All the terminal devices mainly are character devices. Like when you press a key on the keyboard, then it is a character. So character, it is a character device. And line discipline, this is an interpreter for the information from the terminal device. Whenever terminal device means this keyboard, monitor, mouse, whenever information arrives from keyboard, then this line discipline interprets it. If you press A, this A is interpreted in some format. It has got some code, and this code will be converted into some binary form and all that. And this okay, line discipline is TTY discipline. TTY is a line discipline that what it does is it combines terminals data stream onto standard input and output streams of users running processes. It combines them, TTY, and several processes may be running simultaneously, and this TTY line is responsible for attaching and deattaching terminal input output from various processes. User 1, user 2, user 3, these three users are using the terminal devices. So this one has to attach to user 1 when user 1 finishes, detach and attach to user 2 when user 2 finishes, detach and attach to this one. Okay, and then interprocess communication in Linux. Inter-process communication is communication between the processes. This is done in Linux. Uh, like Unix, Linux inform processes that an event has occurred via signals. Whenever a process send a message to another process, Linux inform the other process through signal. And there are a limited number of signals, and each signal number will signify or will indicate a particular type of message. And Here Linux kernel does not use signals to communicate with processes which are running in kernel mode. Rather, communication with the kernel is accomplished via scheduling states. Processes which are running in kernel mode does not use signals. Rather, they use this scheduling. And System 5 Unix semaphores. Process can wait for a signal or a semaphore. Semaphores scale better, and operations on multiple semaphores can be atomic. We learned that this semaphore is a integer variable that provides mutual exclusion and synchronization. So it uses that technique to have no conflict among the processes. And data can be passed between processes. There is a technique called pipe mechanism. There is a process P1, there is another process P2, and then a pipe may be created. Okay, and then this pipe has two ends, and this pipe also has two ends, read and write end, read and write end, and then this P1 can use read. If P1 uses read and write end will not function, and then here W2 has to use write end, so this will write the data and P2 reads it. So this is a mechanism and which Linux uses in order to pass data between the processes. And the network structure. Networking is key area of functionality for Linux. It supports standard internet protocols, TCP/IP, that is supported by Linux. And Linux supports socket interface, socket system calls, and then there are protocol drivers and network device drivers. All these are available in Linux, which facilitates communication between the processes on multiple machines. And security, there is a good security in Linux. This pluggable authentication module system is available under Linux, and these pluggable authentication modules are based on shared library that can be used by any system component that needs to authenticate users. And this access control under Unix system, including Linux, is performed using the use of unique numeric identifier. Every user and every group has been assigned an ID, and based on the ID, based on the user, uh, whether he belongs to a particular group or not, some access control is performed by assigning protections, like what permissions a user has based on a user ID and group ID to which the user belongs. And then Linux augments the standard Unix set UID mechanism in two ways. There is a set UID mechanism in setting user ID mechanism. It implements a POSIX specification user ID mechanism, which allows a process to repeatedly drop and reacquire its effective UID. Means it can drop its ID and then acquire the ID. And it has got it has added process characteristics that grants the subset of the rights of the effective user ID. If a user has a particular user ID, this user can grant the rights to subset of the rights, not all the rights. If read, write, execute is there, then this can assign read right to some other user. This is and okay, fine. With this, we completed Linux system. Let us now begin. Any doubts in this?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Uh, Next, Unix Windows XP. Windows XP is an operating system by Microsoft, and this XP, in this chapter, the chapter objectives is to explore the principles upon which Windows XP has been designed, and then understand how Windows XP can run programs designed for other operating systems, and then provide a detailed expression of Windows XP file system. And then networking protocols in Windows XP, and it covers the interface available to system and application programmers. So these are the things which we will study in this chapter. However, as per your syllabus, we have general architecture, NT-kernel, and NT-executive. Only 3 topics are there, so we will be studying only 3 topics from this. So Windows XP is a 32-bit primitive multitasking operating system for Intel microprocessors. Okay, and these are the key goals. It provides portability, security, POSIX compliance, multiprocessor support, extensibility, international support, compatibility with the DOS and Windows application. And if you don't understand any of this term, you please ask me. And it uses microkernel architecture, and it available in 4 versions: professional server, advanced server, and national server. Okay, Windows XP comes in. Actually, now Windows XP is not there, but because it is there in your syllabus, you are studying. Um, Now, when we have Windows 10, in 1988, Microsoft decided to develop a new technology, NT, portable operating system that supported both OS by 2 and POSIX API. These are the two other operating systems. So Microsoft decided to develop an operating system that supports both the APIs, and NT was supposed to use OS by 2 API as its native environment during development, um, but later it was changed to use Windows 32 API. It's all about, they have got API, application programming interface, some functions. So initially they thought that they should use so initially it uses it thought that they thought that they should use OS by 2 API. Later they decided that they should use Windows 32 API only. And then what are the design principles? Extensibility uh, extensibility means extensibility, that supports extension of a system. So extensibility is supported by Windows NT architecture uh, by using by leveraging the architecture. Layered architecture. If you have a layered architecture, then what happens is, if you have to introduce something new, you can add one more layer on top of the existing layers. Okay, so on top of the executive, several server subsystems operate in user mode, uh, and also most of the operating system modules most of the operating this supports that runs in user mode. You know, this is this is kernel mode. These are user mode. So most of the operating system modules run in user mode. That way, you can add any other module, and it starts running in user mode. That is extensibility design principle. And portability design principle is that it can be moved on any hardware architecture with a few changes. It is written in C and C++, and processor dependent code is isolated in a dynamic link library called hardware abstraction layer. You know, if uh, you are running on one type of hardware, you have the hardware specific code in HAL. And when you are porting, when you are installing the operating system on some other kind of hardware, that hardware has this hardware abstraction layer, and the remaining everything will be same. Everything remains same. Only this part differs. That way it supports portability. And next design principle is okay, it has got layered system of modules. It has this HAL, kernel, and executive. They run in protected mode. In user mode, collection of subsystems, environmental subsystems, emulating different operating system, protection subsystem. This run in user mode. This run in protected mode. Protected mode is nothing but the kernel mode. HAL, kernel, and executive. Okay, and then this is the. I think I should look at this XP architecture. This is hardware at the lowest level. On top of it, you see there is a hardware abstraction layer. This hardware abstraction layer, and then graphic device drivers and virtual memory manager. Only these are the three components that are interacting with hardware, and remaining all the other components are independent. Therefore, it is easy to port, to extend. And this IO manager includes file system manager, cache manager, device drivers, network drivers, and then you have these other components. This is executive. This whatever is there in this. Whatever you see in this blue color is known as executive. This executive has uh, these components: IO manager, object manager, security reference monitor, process manager, plug and play manager, virtual memory manager, local procedure call facility. This is known as the executive of operating system. This is the kernel, which includes the basic and core functionality. This is hardware abstraction layer that directly interacts with the hardware and which is hardware dependent. All right. And Windows 32 subsystem, uh, it is running in user mode. Look at this. It supports POSIX subsystem. It supports all these POSIX, MS-DOS, um, and then OS by 2. All these subsystems, they run in the user mode. Along with this logon process, security subsystem, authentication package, security account manager database, all these run in user mode. Okay, and these things run in protected mode. System components. First one, kernel. Kernel is the foundation for the executive and subsystem. You can see that here. Kernel, this one. Here, this is the foundation for this executive and other subsystems. And it never paged out of memory, it always runs. And its four main responsibilities is thread scheduling, interrupt and exception handling, low level processor synchronization, recovery after a power failure. These are the four main responsibilities of the kernel. Kernel is object oriented, and it has got two sets of features: dispatcher objects and control objects. Dispatcher objects control dispatching and synchronization. And synchronization, it includes events, mutants, mutexes, semaphores, threads, timers. Uh, these things are handled by uh, dispatcher objects. Control objects, they control asynchronous procedure calls, interrupts, power notify, power status, and so on. So this is about kernel. And then kernel processes and threads. Here, in kernel you have threads. Threads are the unit of execution scheduled by kernel's dispatcher, and thread has its own state. It has got priority. It has got processor affinity and accounting information. And thread has six states: ready, standby, running, waiting, transition, terminated. Okay, the processor has a virtual memory address space information, and this process, you have a process which has virtual address space, virtual memory address space, and its related attributes and values. And thread is created within a process. You have a process. In this process, you can create 2 3 threads. This is thread 1, thread 2, thread. So thread is share this address space. This is process 1. And then kernel scheduling. This dispatcher uses 32 level priority scheme. There are priorities given. 32 level priority, 0 to 15 is one class, 16 to 31 is another class. Means these priorities are divided into these two classes, and based on this, scheduling is performed. And characteristics of XP's priority strategy, it tends to give very good response time to interactive threads. If the thread is interactive, means user is um, using it at that point in time, then that one is given high priority. And therefore its performance is improved because because it has got a high priority, it is scheduled first. And it enables IO bond threads to keep IO devices busy. IO bond threads means threads that are meant to do IO operation. That is that those are also executed so that they can read or write data from devices. And complete bound threads soak up the spare CPU cycles in the background. Whenever there is a spare CPU cycle, a free CPU cycle which is not in use, the threads uses that and can uh, use it in some uh, productive task. And scheduling can occur when a thread enters the ready or wait state. So whenever there is a thread that enters in the system, scheduling is performed if it is ready. Okay, and when thread terminates or an application terminates, then application changes the thread's affinity or processor uh, thread's priority or processor's affinity. It finishes means its priority is changed. And this real-time threads are given preference over the threads that occur in the background because uh, they are being used by the user. And XP does not guarantee that real-time thread will start to execute within any particular time limit. This is known as soft real-time. Hard real-time means if you say that your thread should start within 10 minutes. This is hard real-time. Within 10 minutes, thread should start. But XP does not support this. XP supports soft real-time. Perhaps at 15th minute or at 12th minute, as soon as possible it starts, but it may not stick to the deadline. This is known as soft real time. And these are the interrupt levels, and these are the types of interrupts in Windows XP. Machine check or bus error is interrupt 31. Means if machine uh, checks for some error, or if bus error occurs, then this interrupt is raised. Power fail, when power fails, this interrupt occurs. Like this, for different interrupts, there are different interrupt levels. And then kernel handle traps. If you remember, trap is a software interrupt that occurs when any exception or error occur. Then this exception handler has to actually trap handler are handled by the kernel's exception dispatcher. Exceptions that cannot be handled by the trap handler are handled by kernel's exception dispatcher. Typically, there are trap handlers that handles errors and exceptions. Um, but when trap handler cannot handle, then essentially this kernel's exception dispatcher handles it. And then executive. Okay, that is about kernel. Now, executive. You see, executive has several components. First component is object manager. Object manager, this XP uses objects for all its services and entities. And object manager supervises the use of all objects. It generates object handle, means everything is in the form of an object where you have data and functions. And then this every object has a handle, which is nothing but an ID. So this object manager generates handle, checks the security, and keeps track of which processes are using each object. And then these objects are manipulated by a standard set of methods, namely create, open, close, delete. These are the stand methods through which objects are manipulated. There is another part of executive, which is naming object. Means it is actually a part of object handling, naming the objects. So XP executives allows any object to be given a name. It can be permanent or temporary. And object names are structured like any file path names. And XP implements symbolic link objects, which are similar to symbolic links. Uh, this is all about, um, you have symbolic link means it's like an alias. Here there is an object O1. Uh, this O2 is an alias for O1. So O2 will point to O1. Okay, this way, and every object has got some access control list, means the permissions. And then executive also has a virtual memory manager. This virtual memory manager assumes that the underlying hardware supports virtual to physical mapping, and mapping of paging mechanism, and transparent cache coherence. These are the features that virtual memory manager uh, supports and assumes that the hardware also supports. And virtual VM manager in XP uses page-based mechanism. Page-based mechanism means the memory is divided into fixed size pages, and here in XP the size of each page is 4 KB. And it uses two-step process to allocate memory. The first step reserves a portion of the process address space. Second step commits the allocation by assigning space in the 2000 paging file. Okay, and this is the virtual memory layout. In this virtual memory layout, you can see that there is a page directory entry which points to nodes that also has this page table entries. Means these are not actual pages. This is a hierarchy. If you look at here, this directory entry, then table entry, page table entry, which points to the actual page. So in every directory, you have multiple pages, and each page is pointed to by this page table entry. And then this multiple, this virtual memory manager address has to be translated in XP, and it uses several data structures. It has got page directory that contains 1024 page directory entries, okay, of size 4 bytes. And each page directory entry points to a page table which contains 1024 page table entries of size 4 bytes. And each page table entry points to 4 KB page, whatever we saw in this. This is 0 to 1023, means totally 1024. Here you have 1024 directory entries, page directory entries, 1024 for each page directory entry. There are 1024 page table entries, and each page table points to the page. And then a 10-bit integer can represent all the values. Um, it uses 10-bit integer because 10 bits 2 to the power of 10 means it is 1024. And this property is used when translating a virtual address pointer to a byte address in physical memory. This hierarchy is used in order to translate the virtual address pointer to physical memory. The virtual address is different and physical address is different. You see, physical address is the actual address in the memory. Virtual address is the address that is you know that is generated by the operating system with respect to each user's process. It is not global address, whereas this physical memory address is a global address. And a page can be in one of the 6 states. It can be a valid page, it can be zeroed page, free page, standby page, modified page, bad page. Depending on what type of page it is, it is it can be in one of the 6 states. Okay. And then virtual to physical address translation, you see here page directory entry, page table entry, and page offset. Address, this address, 32-bit address. In 32-bit address, you see 10 bits for page directory, and then 20 bits for page table entry, and 12 bits for uh, byte offset. And then page file table entry, here you see the 32-bit address 0 to 31, and we whether it is valid or not valid, then page table, and then protection bits, then this one I don't know, I have to check up. This is page address. So 5 bits for page protection. These 5 bits for page protection, 20 bits for page frame address, and 4 bits for selecting page file. This one, 3 bits to describe the page state. Okay, these three are the bits to describe the page states. Okay. Then process manager is another component in the executive. It is used for creating, deleting processes, threads, and it can handle issues like parent-child relationship. When a process is created, another process. So One process is known as parent, another. And then this local procedure called facility is another component of executive. It allows the communication between client and server. And a local procedure call means it assumes that the client and server are located in the same machine. And one of three types of message passing techniques must be specified. And first type is suitable for small messages up to 256. Second type avoids copying large messages by pointing to the shared memory. And third method is called quick LPC, used by graphical display portion. In one system you can have multiple processes. One can be a server, one another can be a client. So for small messages they can use message queues, means client write a message in a message queue, server reads it. In large messages, for large messages, client writes this message uh, on a shared memory location, which is also accessed by server and they can use it. And then graphical display portion is uses quick LPC, local procedure call, for displaying of graphics. And executive IO manager is another component which is responsible for file systems, cache management, device drivers, network drivers. It handles all this. It keeps track of all the files that are loaded in file system, manages buffers, and it works with virtual memory manager and provide memory mapped file IO. And also it controls XP cache manager, which handles caching for the entire IO system. And it supports both synchronous and asynchronous operations. And it provides timeouts for drivers. It's all these IO related tasks performed by IO manager component of executive. File IO, you see here, there is an IO manager. We have disk driver. There is a file system. There is a process which is performing an IO. A cache manager stores a copy of the file, data copy. Virtual manager brings in the page if it is not available in the memory. So all this encompasses file IO. And security reference monitor, this is also a part of executive. This object oriented nature of XP enables use of uniform mechanism to perform runtime access validation and audit checks. Validations have to be performed. uh, you know um, Audit checks and access runtime access validations. Security related aspects are dealt by the security reference monitor. Whenever a process opens a handle to a object, security reference monitor checks whether the process has the permission to open that object. uh, if it has, it is given the access, otherwise it is not given. This plug and play manager of executive is used to recognize and adapt to changes in the hardware configuration. Plug and play means you can attach any device to the computer system and it starts working. So that is plug and play. So Windows XP support that, and it recognizes uh, and adapt changes in the hardware configuration. Dynamically, it does that. And when new devices are added, PCI or USB, the PNP manager loads the appropriate drive. And the manager also keeps track of the resources used by each device. So, and this environmental subsystem, um, this user mode processors layered over the native XP executive. This is layered over the native XP executive. to enable XP programs to run, um, you know, to run programs that are developed by developed for another operating system. And I think this is not part of general architecture, anti-kernel, anti-executive. That's it. Environmental subsystems are not there in your syllabus. Let me check again. So this in this you have this kernel part and this executive part. This part is not there in the syllabus. So whatever we studied about this executive components and kernel functionality, that is sufficient. So you have up to that only. I have posted this in the group, so you can go through. If you have any doubts, anything, I think with this we have completed our syllabus. Our 5 minutes. You have any doubt, any concern, you please ask.
Okay.
Please go ahead. Anything to ask? Have you started preparing? Did you understand?
Yeah, ma'am, we have just started going through those documents, whatever you are posting on the group, right?
Mhm,
Those things. Yeah, it's helpful, man, for us to read through and refer back again. And madam, one request.
mhm,
Yeah, ma'am, if you can give us some very important questions out of these all, which is like a main syllabus for our examination.
mhm,
So it will help us to prepare for that. And we came to know from Venugopal sir that we will be getting 8 questions, out of
mhm,
which 5 we need to attempt and 3 are choices. So, ma'am, request is if you can provide at least the twice of those numbers, means at least 15, 16 to 20 questions, which is very important. Then it will be very helpful for us, ma'am, to prepare, because we have other subjects as well, 4 subjects to prepare, and it's a short period, and we are doing course on a fast track basis. Uh,
mhm,
so this is the request.
mhm. So,
Ma'am,
okay. Hmm,
if you
please.
are free or if you are available, also you can take one more session to just review only the points based on your examination, on our examination.
Mhm,
Because as the semester is ready to take for tomorrow,
mhm,
and if you are okay, if you are there is free time for you, you can discuss only main topics which are helpful for us for the examinations to go through it.